true. Larry Stewart, who's had one or two disappointing experiences like all of us, wonders just how important it is to get praise from the critics in the TV business, that is. Of course, in the legitimate theater, it's true that half a dozen men can kill a play overnight and occasionally make one. I don't think it's quite the same way in TV. What do you think, Miss Furness? Would you say they were very important in this
Well,
period?
I agree with you absolutely. I don't believe there's a performer alive who doesn't want to get praise from critics, but just as you say, the circle of critics has enlarged considerably. And where we used to worry in the theater about 6 or 8 men who were going to write reviews the next day, now we have to worry about several million people, all of whom are critics, because on the knob on the front of every television set, there's that little knob.
Oh, don't point that out to anybody.
They can turn... Don't do it! Not now!
It's true.
But they can. Of course, I do think that all performers should pay attention to criticism, and we know many actors who don't and just listen to what their friends tell them. I heard recently of a television performer who listened only to the nice things that were said about him. He was walking down the street, and a little man came up and said, saw your new show go back on the air last week. And the actor said, oh, really? How did you like it? And he said, I really didn't think it was your best work. And the star said, well, who are you to decide that it wasn't my best work? And the little fellow said, well, who do I have to be?
What do you think, Mr. Levin? Do you think that praise from the critics in this business is a
well,
important thing?
If you can get it, of course, it's a blessing. It's wonderful. Who is that?
The laugh held over from my joke.
If you had to make a choice, unfortunately, between the critics and the people, of course, I would choose in favor of the people, obviously, because, well, there are millions of them. They're up. If I may throw in a little story along with yours, there's a story about a family that had a little boy who was a violinist, gave a recital at town hall, and they invited the critics and the family, and they told the family that if he's a success, they're going to throw a big feed for everybody. Well, after the first number, the critics walked out. The family was ashamed to come home. When they walked home, they found everybody sitting there eating like crazy, and they said, what happened? They said, we liked them.
Mr. Kaufman, you've had one or two brushes with critics in your day. What do you think about
I have to speak from the angle of the legitimate theater, Mr. Patterson, because I know little enough about that, but nothing about TV. Maybe you would say nothing about either one.
No, never would say that.
But since I have a show coming up, I think the critics are handsome, lovable fellows who are very kind to their mothers, those of them who've had mothers. Since you, remember, you brought this up yourself.
True, quite
so
true.
I will pause long enough to say that the name of the show, Mr. Patterson, I think, did you ask me? Yes.
Yes.
Is the Solid Gold, the name of the show is the Solid Gold Cadillac. It opens in Hartford on October 1st, in Washington on October 5th, so hurry to your nearest drugstore and get a bottle.
Thank you very much. And I hope you'll feel about the critics about a month from now the same what you do this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Well, now, there are at least 4 critics this evening. Just for the group and myself who are on your side, Larry.
Oh, thank
Come
you.
and see us again.
My pleasure.
All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's news about Rise, the original push-button shade.
It's new. Now, back to your host, Clifton Patterson.
And here's another performer we're always glad to see and hear. This is Mel Torme.
Thank you for those very kind words.
Kind words. Go on. I bet you hear kinder every day.
Well, I do and I don't, but I do think that there are some performers who hear mighty few of them. They ought to hear more.
For instance.
Well, I know that I have my favorites, and I think they deserve to be on top, but who are yours? Who do you think is the least appreciated person?
One who ought to be appreciated but isn't, is that it? Well, that's one for our expert. Well, Mel Torme has an interesting question. He wants to know who's the least appreciated performer on TV. If you would like to get an more interesting answers next week or some other time, we'll tell you about who's the most overappreciated performer on TV. Well, there's a lot of candidates for that, but what do you think, Mr. Levinson? Who's the least appreciated performer?
Well, I think one of the least appreciated performers on TV is Mr. Kaufman. I say that in this sense because people are always inclined to misconstrue and misunderstand. Everybody thinks, now they said it to me, that he's a very mean, odd, cruel guy. It's not true at all. He's really a very kind man. In fact, he himself told me that he believes in mercy killings.
Kaufman? Mr. Kaufman, do you agree with this estimate of yourself?
I have to leave that to Mr. Levinson. My idea of the least appreciated and most quickly forgotten man on TV, Mr. Fadiman,
Yeah.
is the loser of the first preliminary bout when people are waiting for a championship fight.
That's true. Miss Furness, how about you? Have a few seconds.
Oh, I think I've got a couple of them. I think the
Let's give
person
us one.
behind that steady hand who pours the champagne at the store club show or the beer maybe at the baseball, but I really think the most important person, unsung heroine on this show, is the lady who does Mr. Kaufman's hair.
That's nicely said. Well, you got a couple of sensible answers.
You're so right.
Okay. I'd like to add two straight answers. I think there are three performers on TV and radio that are still to be appreciated properly. Henry Morgan for one, and Bob and Ray for two others.
Great.
They are.
Just wonderful.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I see our time's almost up, but first I'd like you to meet a charming young lady. Closing time for this show business. Next week, our guest panelist will be Jackie Suzanne, and our all-star performers will be John Raitt, Phil Foster, and Gloria Gilbert. And now, speaking also for Sam Levinson, Betty Furness, and George S. Kaufman, this is Clifton Fadiman saying good night. Till next week.
This is Show Business. Be sure to be with us again next week when This is Show Business will be brought to you by Schick Electric Shaver.